Hello friends, in today's film I'd like to talk about something else besides eco-construction. Prior to today I've never spoke of how and why I became somewhat of a hybrid who absorbed within himself the mentality of a Russian as well as Western trades persona and mindset. It so happened that my fate was similar of millions of other Russians who immigrated in the 90s from the collapsed USSR. I've never shared the details of what it was like, and today I want to do a short historic excursion. In the 90s, Mikhail Gorbachev was the ruler and governor of our country, who was enticed by the flattery and promises of Western authorities that his obsequious and subordinate tactics would put an end to the confrontation between West and Russia. However, the official US government doctrine was never interested in establishing peace between Russia and America. The interest of the NATO bloc always revolved around ensuring a fragmentation of Russian world into smaller parts and then to cease its existence altogether. All Gorbachev's actions were done to please the Western master and thus resulted in destruction of USSR. At first he announced perestroika, which in essence means build back better, and under this slogan he rebuilt all that the Soviet people were constructing for decades into total obliteration. All the powerful factories that made our country fully self-sufficient were shut down, and most of the equipment was melted back into raw steel or sold on black market, so that these factories could never start up again. People lost their jobs and all income. They lived below poverty line. At the peak of the complete annihilation of USSR, Mikhail Gorbachev received the Nobel Prize for strengthening peace on the planet. On the 24th of December 1990, the Soviet Union officially ceased to exist. 25 million people found themselves outside the borders of their home country. And within the remnants of what was left, banditry, debauchery, rape, homelessness, despair, degradation, and mass insanity exploded.
Разрежь мою грудь, посмотри мне внутрь, ты увидишь, там все горит огнем. Мама, мы все тяжело больны. Мама, я знаю, мы все сошли с ума. Все тяжело больны. Мама, я знаю, мы все сошли с ума.
After Gorbachev, Boris Yeltsin became the president, who continued the same slavish subordinate tactics and completely wiped out all the remaining industries. On the ruins of Soviet Union, Yeltsin signed a decree about privatization. Under this reform, all the savings that people of our country had were confiscated. Privatization gave a green light to legally steal the resources of former Soviet Union, all of the state's property and people's wealth. Giant factories that were the pride and power of our nation were now sold abroad for pennies. The same applied for all the natural resources and raw materials. Fraudulent uranium schemes, the diamond and gold deals are just to name a few. It became the world of looters, monstrous in scale of theft. The country was systematically flying into the state of a colony. Large American recruitment companies rapidly opened offices in all Russian universities and issued US visas to our talented engineers, scientists, as well as other specialists. This was done in order to strengthen their potential in the IT industry as well as scientific spheres. According to unofficial data from 1989 to 1994, more than 12 million people immigrated out of Russia. Our family was one among these numbers of immigrants. Within a couple of weeks, we packed our suitcases, sold most of our properties, and fled to South Africa. I was absorbed and devastated by my personal strategy of losing my homeland. I read Russian fairy tales about the ancient Rus and Slavic world and its good heroes and fair queens. My homeland slowly became mythologized in my earning mind. The fairy tale stories were tightly woven into real memories, and this mixture became a pleasant, nostalgic fantasy about a magnificent and mystical country. I didn't know or realize what terrible devastation my country was going through after our family fled. I also didn't know that my father was not just an immigrant running away from worse life towards greener pastures, but that he was directly involved in the destruction of our homeland by looting the USSR's bakery and meat producing equipment. The socialist era was replaced by wild capitalism. Businessmen of the 90s sold Soviet property in the form of equipment and resources to the West. This was mostly their only activity. Jeans, chewing gum, rock and roll, Coca-Cola, to pretend that you are someone greater had more value than just to be who you are. And my father went out of his way to pretend, to appear to be number one. He sold the bakeries abroad whilst the ordinary people stood in huge queues for bread. On this photo, he made me depict how I obediently served him, pouring a hot cup of tea for my master whilst he's having an ice bath. There was nothing in the pot. It did not matter, because to pretend was of more importance than just to be. He bought 5 expensive apartments, all whilst ordinary men were on the edge of survival. After our immigration, for more than 20 years, he kept on spending the money that he looted in the Soviet Union. He never realized himself in South Africa, and throughout his life, as long as I remember, he drank into oblivion without stopping, until such time that he was diagnosed with cancer. 3 years ago, he died, after long years of debilitating illness. My adaptation in a new country became a living nightmare. The scariest part of this hell was the harassment and ridicule from my classmates in King Edward Boys School. I spoke with a heavy accent. I also didn't want to play touch rugby, and this made them hate me ever more for being so different. In despair, I ate some poisonous seeds at a discotheque. After 3 days, I came to my senses, and as punishment, my father sent me to an old boys boarding school for 2 years. The most terrible thing in the path of human degradation is that it is a very slow and gradual fall. When despair and burning loneliness morphs into the loss of any conscious morality, you no longer see yourself, how you turn from a loving and caring child into a desperate, cynical and vain person. At first, it seems that you grow a thick skin of protective armor around you, but in fact you lose all ability to feel life. I wore a fake plastic smile on my face, but in reality, I was almost soulless and dead. I'm sure that in many ways I would have repeated the fate of my father and would have ended my life in a very similar manner. Because for a big part of my life I was also driven by the desire to be cool and above the rest. Nothing was sacred. Money and a sense of superiority was my main priority. Successful success at the forefront forever. Die, but earn a killing of wealth. I pretended to everyone that I was a successful and happy person, but success has nothing to do with happiness. Straight after school, I created my company 3D Decor, which eventually decorated large corporate events for the wealthiest corporations of the planet. My intent for its manifestation was also warped. Now that I left boarding school, I let totally rip loose and wanted to rise above the rest. Thus said, I was making decor not really for the flourishing and joy of society, but rather to show myself off, for self-affirmation and superiority over the society.
What went wrong there?
Well, the point that we planned to go down was going up. And here we've got another, when they cut, they just leave a little piece. I constantly tried to compensate for my gigantic baggage of inferiority complex with achievements and success. The bigger and the brighter, the better. South Africa, infused with its colonial way of life, gave me full reins to drown in arrogance and vanity. Its slave system based on apartheid, to this day, where black people still wipe the asses of the whites, corrupted my integrity at the core. In many cases, the indigenous African people hate their white masters, but they obey them unquestionably. In Russia, no one would tolerate your cheap show-offs. Just because you're employing people, your employees will never simply humble in response to your arrogance. Russia rapidly clears the vain mindset of slave-owning habits. I no longer want to be infected by the colonial mindset. I had enough of that in my past. Yes, I am a descendant of someone who plundered and robbed our country. I cannot fix this. However, I'm able to transform myself and live a life with a diametrically opposite system of coordinates to that of my father. When I speak of concepts such as capitalism and socialism, I do not do so in socio-economic sense, but rather in a psychological one that shape the individual's beliefs. Thus said, there is no reason to argue about the accuracy of the terminology. The Soviet person received everything ready-made for him. We had very cheap food, free education, free medical care, housing, union vacation packages, etc. However, in return, the people of the socialistic industrial era simply had to go to work every day until pension. People neither were allowed nor had the skills to create their own businesses or to develop their own thriving niches. In this sense, the socialistic structure released a person from the endless race for enrichment and illusory success, as the society simply was not stratified into rich and poor. The downfall of this was that the people were deprived of ways of their own individual realization. After the collapse of USSR, our society began to rapidly degrade as soon as the socialistic structure was removed from under their feet. The Soviet man learned to be diligent whilst he was given grades at school. This made him naive, whilst driven and dependent by praise. If this was not true, then why would it be so easy to remove his moral and conscious values and to convince him to believe in the American dream? No government system can create a conscious, integrated and balanced being. If a child was humiliated in his youth, he will most definitely become a neurotic being who with equal force will strive to suppress and be suppressed by others. Throughout history, the society has been building relationships mainly from a paradigm of suppression and subordination. If humanity continues to believe that there are those certain selective first-class elites, whilst others who are the subordinate secondary class or third world, playing out the role of slaves, within such a paradigm does humanity have a chance of survival? Be that as it may, beyond any concepts, we are the same in our desires to feel mutual support, trust, respect and love, and in a sense there is no difference between us. It is important for me to talk about our points of unity and our similarities, and not the differences. We all have something to share with one another. Let's engage in mutual learning. Let's explore each other's cultures and learn each other's languages. Let's build together, literally and figuratively. Friends, I encourage you, let's just be together.
новий звук.
How would you like to build your very own spacious home in 3 months for under 10 grand? It is a reality. My step-by-step video training will teach in the finest of details how to build this same home DIY style with the help of another pair of hands just at times. In our training we have 13 lessons covering the 3 types of vault. A timber Siberian vault that I built for $2,000 for Canadian sub-zero climate, a Gothic arched vault, as well as a ferrocement one. I've recorded the following video lessons so you can learn how to weave robust walls with Hyper Adobe, bend C-grade timber into beams without glue, construct and mount a Gothic arched roof above these beams, install a second-hand heavy windows, pour floor slab, do finishing touches and plaster. If you purchase our training before the end of October, I will include a bonus lesson on how to build and install a 12-volt PV operated water organizing module. Join my latest video training and learn how to transform your life with your own hands on a shoestring budget.